I left them July 11th, 1992 to start Cameron's of Worthington October 5th of 1993. Fast forward, now we're 32 years in business. We have 6,000 total associates today and have restaurants across the country. And, we're the 5th largest privately held multi-concept restaurant company in the country.
Hey, teammates. Welcome to another episode of It's All About the Team. And we're so fortunate to be sitting in downtown Columbus, Ohio at Butcher and Rose with Cameron Mitchell. Welcome, Cameron.
So if we're better today than we were yesterday and better tomorrow than we are today, by virtue of that alone, tomorrow will be more of a successful restaurant company than we are today. In the room, we calculated we had 1,200 years of experience with those 63 people. We say, if you meet someone who got fired from our company, you got to pat them on the back because they worked hard at it.
Right? I promise you, your team will gain value if you get Cameron Mitchell's book, Yes.
Thank you. Great to be here with you, Jim.
Well, our viewers know you as a restaurant owner. I know you as a friend. I know you as a civic leader. And I know you as an educator, which I'm high on all those things. And it's going to be so much fun to chat a little bit about your journey. All of our guests, we glean so much from the lessons they've learned trying to build teams. It becomes very apparent that nothing's linear, nothing happens easy, and all the rest. And we were talking off camera about your book called Yes, and now what's the question? And in my mind, anyone that's trying to build a team needs to read that book. I spent my whole life building teams, and I learned more. I wish I'd have had that when I started coaching.
Oh, you're too kind. Well, thank you.
It was special. Yeah. Tell us how the genesis of the title came.
Well, I got to go all the way back to my one-bedroom apartment up at the north end of town here in 1992 when I left my old company to start Cameron Mitchell Restaurants. I wanted to be president of a restaurant company since I was 18 years old. So that was my goal. And I realized I was working for a small company here in Columbus. We had 6 restaurants. And I realized that wasn't going to happen. So I left them. I had an epiphany one night. I was going to start my own company. And so I left them. And the first month before I did anything else, I read our company culture and values and our goals. And I wanted to go about the course of building a restaurant company. It's never about opening one restaurant. It's about birthing a company. So it wrote that company culture and values. And part of that company culture and values was the yes is the answer, what's the question? And we use that phrase to define great people delivering genuine hospitality and here in our business. And so, and we mean it. And we've got hundreds and hundreds of stories about it. But it's yes always requires work. No requires no work whatsoever. It's easy to say no, and you move on. Yes means I got to go do something. I got to make something happen. So that's how it happened. So that's been with us since day one. And for our 25th anniversary, I've been asked many times before to maybe consider writing a book, and so I did to celebrate and commemorate our 25th our business anniversary, And I did it as a legacy project for our people to just actually memorialize that and my thoughts on that and how that applies to our company. So it's very much alive in our company today and is symbolic of how we kind of run our business.
The story I remember a lot is the MILKSHAKE story. Could you tell our listeners and viewers about the MILKSHAKE story?
Sure. So that's the one thing that hasn't changed. Our company culture and values, I say, is everything else is up for negotiation, but our values and our culture is not up for negotiation. It's cast in stone. And so the one thing about our culture that changed in 2002. My son was 4 years old, and I had another son, a year and a half or so, or a year. And we went Saturday afternoon with my in-laws out to lunch, and my wife and the kids. And everybody knows you have kids, you got to order food right away. And so
right.
I ordered a grilled cheese sandwich for my son. They said, well, we don't have grilled cheese here. I said, okay, well, how about, can I have the club sandwich, hold the turkey, ham, lettuce, tomato, bacon, middle slice of bread, and the mayo? If you could take what's left and saute it in a pan for me, that'd be great. See, I got my grilled cheese. And so I said, how about I like a chocolate milkshake for my son, small chocolate milkshake. She said, I can't do that. All we have is a big Haagen-Dazs milkshake. It's like a quart of ice cream, and we just don't have a small chocolate milkshake. And I said, will you ask your manager if you can make that happen for me? And she goes over, asks the manager. I see the manager shake her head. No, she comes back. I'm sorry, we can't do it. I said, well, will you ask your manager to come over and see me at least? My wife starts kicking me under the table. Don't make a scene. I go, don't worry. I just want to understand why. And so gal comes over. She says, I'm sorry. We can't make your son a small chocolate milkshake because we pre-portion the ice cream. And what will we do with the rest of the ice cream? Well, in my mind, I know I'm a restaurateur. I know that's crazy. No one's in the back pre-portioning ice cream, cutting up ice cream and making it right. And secondly, I said, so I go, okay. And secondly, I didn't even care what they did with the rest of the ice cream. I just wanted a chocolate milkshake for my son. So I said, well, can you make a chocolate milk for me? And she's like, oh, sure. Now she's genuine hospitality. She goes, turns the leaf to make the chocolate milk. And I said, well, hold on one sec. On your menu, they had a warm carrot cake dessert and a warm brownie dessert. It said a la mode, $2.95. I said, what does a la mode mean? She goes, well, it's a scoop of ice cream to go to the dessert. I go, perfect. Can I have an order of a la mode to go with that milkshake or that chocolate milk you're going to make for me? If you whip it up in a blender, that'd be great. And she says, okay, sir. She admonished me at the table. It's going to be expensive. I'm like, okay, no problem. My wife says, we're never coming back here again, etc. So anyways, fast forward 2 weeks later, I'm a keynote speaker down at the Hyatt Regency here for Business First magazine, and 500 people for lunch. And I'm telling that story how yes is the answer. What's the question at Cameron Mitchell Restaurants is our philosophy. And if we have the items we need to make something, we'll do it. And so 2 weeks later, a gal comes up to me in the street and says, my husband saw you speak at the Hyatt. Wanted to take you up on your milkshake story. Yes is the answer. What's the question? So went into one of your restaurants, went to the bar, asked to order a chocolate milkshake, and the bartender says, we don't make chocolate milkshakes here. I'm sorry, we can't do that. And so I found out about it. So I go marching to our Monday morning leadership meeting. I'm very much like Chicken Little, right? The sky's falling. This is what's happened. Our culture is not resonating the way through the organization it should. I'm hitting the panic button. We got to figure something out. These people, what they don't understand about yes is the answer. What's the question? So we start brainstorming ideas, and we come up with, well, use a milkshake to be the symbol of hospitality of our company. Great, perfect. How about let's make milkshake pins for everybody to wear? Okay, for your service anniversaries, on and on and on. And let's tell everybody goes through orientation in our company as a 4-hour orientation before they start. Even begin training, and we'll just tell the milkshake story then. There, I said, we'll do a video about it, and they can watch. And I'm like, okay, all right, good. It's just not enough though, so we're trying to figure out. Let's make everybody a chocolate milkshake on their first day at orientation before they even start with the company. Their very first day, and the milkshake became such a symbol of hospitality in our company. We start every major meeting. I do orientations personally for every new restaurant, 150 new associates, we call them in there, and we do a milkshake toast with them. And we have guests. I think you were a guest one year. I think you came to present the milkshake to us. And I always, that's a tradition in our company. We've had Charles Woodson, we've had Urban Meyer, we've had all sorts of folks come present that milkshake to me. So today we make thousands of chocolate milkshakes in Cameron Mitchell Restaurants. And now people try to trick us. Like we have a big catering company. We had a catering event somewhere and say, can I get a chocolate milkshake? And sure, because we bring what we call it a chocolate milkshake kit to every single catering event. And so we don't. It doesn't happen very often in our company anymore. But it does. Occasionally still something slips through the cracks. But
well, and that was the lesson. And to me, what was so great about it is I read it and I thought back, the training of you call them associates, I think of them as my coaching staff, whatever, is that's what's so critical, is them understanding that yes is the answer, and making sure that that's deep within their soul. And it won't be just a milkshake sometime. It might be, something else. And so what permeated that book to me, and was the great lesson that all of you can take, is that the people who are going to touch your customers, or the people who are going to touch the people you're trying to impact. So in our case, is in a football team, my coaches, my strength coaches, my trainers, my equipment managers, all the people. It's how outstanding they become, then the players will be fine. And that seems to me, as I read through the book, is that, has that been one of your core values, that, hey, it's about us and the customers will benefit?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's only our guests and our customers, it's our people too. So, it's funny, side story real quick. I was at one of our restaurants with my daughter, my wife, and my son, and a couple of our friends, our family friends. This happened like 2 weeks ago. And Sunday brunch, and my daughter orders a grilled salmon to go with her salad. And the server comes back up and says, I'm sorry, we've smoked all of our salmon in the house. We don't really offer a grilled salmon. We have it on a smoked salmon, but it's all smoked. So we can't do that for you. I go, oh, we have two of the restaurants right here across the street. Just run over and grab a piece of salmon from them. And, she was embarrassed. And that ran through the company pretty quickly.
Right.
That someone, and the server didn't realize. She's like, oh my God, yes, we could do that. So even when you teach it, it doesn't always happen the way you want it to do. But, So in my career, I was a young GM. I was 24 years old. And I had a little mutiny on the bounty going on. My bunch of servers called in my boss, or came to see my boss, and said, either he goes or we go. And that was, and he says, well, I don't want him to go, but I don't want you to go either. Let me talk to him. And I was running around telling him what to do and working 90 hours a week and thinking I was doing a great job. And, I was on top of the business and all that. And then I hear this. It was just devastating for me. Like, what? I thought I was doing a great job. And so that's when I stopped, I paused, I read some good leadership books and focused and reoriented my entire process to more of a servant leadership, to where I was, I didn't worry anymore about how good I was doing. I worried about how good everybody else was doing and supporting everybody else. I use the triangle analogy as the top of a triangle. I'm here, here's our team all the way down here. It spreads out. And I spend my entire day underneath working up.
Yeah, pushing them up.
Yeah. So we fast forward, now we're 32 years in business. We have 6,000 total associates today and have restaurants across the country. And we had a leadership conference with our senior leaders in the company. So we were 63 of us there. Myself, 12 executive team members, and then 50 we call director level leaders, strength coaches, if you will, all those people, right? So in the room, we calculated we had 1,200 years of experience with those 63 people, not in the business, but in our company. So the average tenure in that room is 19 years with our company. And so that to me is the biggest testimony of, and we've had hundreds of CMR marriages, hundreds of CMR babies, people building their careers with our company. And that to me is the crux of the issue. And if you can achieve that, then, everything else kind of comes into play, because you got these teammates that around you are supporting you in the company and trying to get that championship game, if you will. And that's how we operate. So I always say, great restaurateuring is difficult. If it was easy, everybody would do it. I'm sure winning championship football games and building championship teams is difficult. But it's not impossible.
Right.
It just means you got to work a little harder, and you got to, win with people. I always say I'm going to get to the championship game with the team I have. I've never traded people out and kicked people to the curb and, this and that. They make a mistake. They fall down, whatever. I'm there to pick them up, not to hold them down. And I joke, all the time we say, if you meet someone who got fired from our company, you got to pat them on the back because they worked hard at it.
Right?
So it's like, we're not in a business. I say, we're in a success business, not the failure business. And I'm firing people. And I say, if we're going to fire people for making mistakes, you got to start with me. No one's made bigger mistakes in the organization than I have. So
that reminds me of, I was 25 years a head coach, and only one time did I let a coach go. And that was after working like crazy, trying to help them get where we needed to be, our culture, make a difference with our players. And it was probably the best thing for the person because they went on and learned some lessons. But I'm a believer in that too. I think, raising from, within, Lord knows God's been patient with me. So if I can't be patient with the people that are grinding, for us. And so I think about all the way back in your career, you started with what type of restaurant the first time? What was your first restaurant?
Well, our first restaurant was Cameron's of Worthington, still there today.
Okay.
Little 100-seat American Beach. That's all I could garner enough money for or to do, and so, but it's still there today, 32 years later.
So how did you go about building that first team? Because there's a lot of people watching and listening saying, okay, I'm just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I put that first team together?
Well, so I'd run a small group of restaurants prior to that. I had 6 restaurants I oversaw the operations for. And I left them July 11th, 1992 to start Cameron's of Worthington October 5th of 1993. We built like 110 restaurants since then. But so I had a couple people, I was adamant about not poaching from the old company to start my company. That just, I didn't want to be that kind of person. I'm going to start it, and I'm going to start it. And so, and with that said, I did have some people that just left that company that I, kind of said, hey, I would like to start this journey with you. And I said, okay, great. So I had this little nucleus of a couple people, or three other people, and none of them are with me today, unfortunately, but lots of other long tenured 30-year plus associates. But anyway, so we started out, and it's I always say it's like building a snowball. It's like our snowman. It's like a little bit at a time. You keep building, you keep pushing, and we open up at our first restaurant, our second restaurant, our third restaurant, etc. But in building organizations, building teams, I think there is you inevitably come across defining moments that define this, how we got to here. Not everything's that way, but there's some some times. And I remember I had just opened our second restaurant, and our chef, who'd been with me in the beginning, was a great chef, but he wasn't a great leader, and he was mean to people, we're in the process of opening my second restaurant. We've only opened the first restaurant a year ago, so we're still a very young company. But he said some inappropriate things to one of our fellow female managers, and I said, I'll be right over there, straighten this out. And he was gone within 5 minutes of me getting in the building. And because our company culture is specifically says we treat people with respect and dignity and speak an eloquent language to each other, And so he completely violated that, And so if I had, and I didn't have another chef, we didn't have someone else in the wings. All right, bring up such and such from the bench. That was not the case.
Right.
But if I believed in our culture, it was a defining moment for our culture and values, and we, in our company, we say the associate comes first. We have all sorts of different pieces and parts of our culture. And he completely violated that. And if the guest came first, and I was worried about the guest service, and I was worried about taking care of that guest tonight at 5 o'clock, I wouldn't have fired him. I said, oh, can you apologize to Sue? And, he was, whatever. And that wasn't the case. And so I call those these culture moments, these defining moments throughout the way that, if I would, I might as well thrown our culture out the window if I would have accepted his behavior and continued in our employment in that regard. So, every once in a while, someone needs to go in that type of manner. But generally speaking, 8% of the time, 99% of the time. I want to do everything we can to save a person. And we've got lots of victories.
So that's the secret, in my mind, of when you know what your culture is, you know what you value, you know how you want your team to be. How do you find the people? Just thinking way back to when you were first started, how do you find the people? How can you read that they have the same values and culture that you do?
Well, I appreciate that question. So the number one question I get is, two questions, I guess, is where do you get such great people and how do you train your people so well, right? And my answer is usually always the same, that we're no different than every other restaurant company in the country. We have our training manuals like anybody else does, and we hire people in masses like anybody else does. And, so that's not it. The point of the matter is we get the same people everybody else gets. The difference is we treat them great. And they know, again, we're an associate first company. I say we're a company built by its people, for its people. We're not owned by the bank. We're not, we're not, et cetera. It's a public company. And so, they know the more they put in, the more they get out, and so they believe, they know how much I care. They know how much we care about them. And when they know how much we care, then we go. So, and I always say, great restaurant touring is difficult. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right? So, but you can't do it without the people. And if our people don't care, I look at it this way. I always say, I look at our company as a triangular situation. So I say as CEO of a restaurant company, our people come first, not our guests. Our guests do not come first. Our people come first. So we take care of our people. That's how we focus, on taking care of our people. And our people then, once they know they're taken care of and they know how much we care, then they want to take care of our guests because they value their job, they value their company, they want to be here. And so they take care of our guests. We'll go to great lengths to take care of our guests. That's how we deliver that great, genuine service and that incredible service and training. And then in return, the guests support us by repeat visits. So it's really a triangular relationship. It is not, the guest, I always say we don't really have a relationship with our guests. We're a relationship with our people. We see them every day, day in and day out. Our guests sometimes comes once a week, once a month, once a year, et cetera. Not that I don't care about our guests, care deeply about our guests, but take care of our people. They'll take care of your guests, or your guests will take care of your company.
Hey, teammates, I want to tell you about a project we're working on with Youngstown State University. One of the ways Ellen and I have decided to give back is through the Tressel Institute for Leadership and Teamwork. We've collected a set of successful business and nonprofit leaders to serve as guest servant leaders in partnership with the Sokolov Honors College to teach university students teamwork, leadership, and personal skills. We teach from a foundation built on gratitude, excellence, hope, love, and selflessness. If you're a young person or parent helping to search for a unique college experience, you can learn more at tresselinstitute.ysu.edu or ysu.edu. Links will be provided in the show notes. And that's a great lesson for our people listening and viewing, is that your point about, hey, we get the same kind of people every other restaurant does. And it's our training, we've said on this podcast 1,000 times, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Right. Sure.
I mean, that's no different.
Yeah.
And building that culture by the training. I remember my son was in college and I think he went over to the fish market. And he had been a server at this place and that place, trying to work through college and so forth. And what he came away with was, nowhere trains you, nowhere pours into you like Cameron Mitchell Restaurant. And that, to me, that's one of the greatest lessons that, we can glean, is that someone might say, well, Ohio State gets all the good players, or, Alabama wins, because Nick gets all the best players. Well, he gets good players, but not that, much different than the people he competes against, right? but what's poured into those players, to me, is what makes the difference. What's poured into the staff, who pour into the players, and so forth. So when you started with that first American Bistro, how did you strategically decide that you were not going to be all one style restaurant? Because what's, I think, amazing as you look at all the different restaurants you've had, I mean, yeah, you've got a few steakhouses and a few seafood, but you've got a wide array. What was the strategy behind that?
Well, I decided to take the hard way.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I don't know. But,
Right.
back to the point real quick before is that, when we're talking about taking care of our people and how much we care, we're closed 8 holidays a year, 7 major holidays plus a Super Bowl every year we're closed. And, if making profit was our number one goal, maintaining our culture and values is our number one goal. Profit is a derivative of that. It's not the purpose of that. And so, but quite frankly, I started to come. I don't want to work on those holidays. I don't want to work on Thanksgiving. I don't want to work on Christmas. I don't want to get up New Year's morning and go to work. But we would be a more, in theory, profitable company if we were open those holidays. But because if we want to take care of our guests so much, but it's not. It's more about our people. And I've never done the math, but who knows, if we were open those holidays, we may not be who we are today either at the same token. So it's easy to think, well, we can do $1 million in sales if we're open Christmas Eve. Yeah, we can. But what's the damage that's going to be created because of that? And if we started changing our culture to manage for profit, then forget about it.
And there'd be a good chance you'd have more turnover in your staff.
Exactly.
And what are the HR costs of that?
Exactly. Right. You can't qualify it, but it's just, I'd rather be that way. I don't, and good leadership starts, I don't want to work those. So why am I going to ask anybody else to work those days? I don't mind doing anything else, but I don't want to work those days. So back to your other question was, we're the 5th largest privately held multi-concept restaurant company in the country. We have restaurants coast to coast, Beverly Hills, and I tell our team, we're one of the most difficult restaurant companies in the country to run because we have 70 restaurants today. We don't have 70 of the same one. We've got 22 different brands, and so what are you, crazy? Why do you do that? But my mentor, idol in the restaurant business is a guy named Rich Melman out of Chicago, led us entertaining restaurants. And in my mind, the greatest restaurateur in the history of the United States. And, he's 80 years old today, but he was incredible. And he had a huge multi-concept restaurant company. And, multi-concepts, the thing about it, they're fun. They're fun to do. It is hard work, but really, if you think about it as a car, what is the difference between a Toyota and a Lexus? I think they're both made by the same company. I think so. So the same chassis is the same. Our culture and values are the same. The way we treat our people are the same. Our processes are the same. What's different, and what I call the body and the window dressing, is in here, and the menu and everything, and how that is different. So, but if you work from restaurant to restaurant, concept to concept, the culture is still the same, and what we expect of our people, what our people expect out of us, all the same. So, but it's fun, but it is challenging. There's no doubt about it. But I wanted people to. It was back then I had noticed, I was never thinking about going outside of Columbus when I started. It just happened, right? So, but I wanted people to go to one of our restaurants on Monday, another one on Wednesday, another one on Friday, another one on Sunday, here in Columbus, and they wouldn't get the same thing. They'd be, different thing, but I'd still get that diner 4 days a week instead of 1 or whatever. And that was the genesis of it. And then what we kind of found out later is it also serves as our farm team, if you will. The fish market was very successful. The steakhouse, we grew those out of town. Ocean Club today, which is now Ocean Prime, is our national brand, coast to coast, very successful. And now we have, we opened up our 3rd Pearl out of Columbus. We opened a derivative of this restaurant in Detroit. That was important. And so, and we're starting to see then we could become concepts that we can replicate. We never go into opening a restaurant or concept, oh, we're going to build a bunch of these. It has to be organic. You have to want to build a great restaurant, and then that great restaurant in return, if it does well, then we can maybe start thinking about building more of them. But we can't plan that in the beginning. Then it becomes a little bit fake. It becomes disingenuous. We're just opening a restaurant to build a bunch of them.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the way we operate.
One other outcome, kind of anecdotally, that I've seen, I've been in a lot of your restaurants and got to know some people and so forth. We were out at the Fiesta Bowl one time, mid-2000, 2005-ish or something, and we had one night off where you could do a family thing.
Yeah, sure.
And so we went out to Ocean Prime, I think it was, in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so we got there, and the maitre d' kind of guy or whatever, the guy greeting you, so wait a minute, we know you from
Columbus. Yeah,
from Columbus.
Tony. Yeah, that was Tony, our GM.
And then talking to Taylor here today, one of your workers and one of your folks in the back, talking about how they've had the opportunity to experience some new things and go and, live in some different places.
Absolutely.
Travel,
yeah.
and you talk about another thing that helps your associates is, being able to go different places, different things, and so like all long journeys, it doesn't go without its ups and downs. And there was a point in time where you sold a number of your restaurants, and then all of a sudden, immediately, you're starting to rebuild, and so every person that's trying to build a team needs to know it's not linear. There's going to be turns in the road, and how you handle the turns in the road will really determine, the level you get. Talk a little bit through when you sold and then started building a new team, I guess, or an addition to the team.
Well, so it was 2008. We had 40 restaurants. We sold 22 of them to Ruth Chris Steakhouse, and we had a tremendous amount of debt. I was signed personally on that debt. I had a young family at the time, and I had just saw our competitors and my friends, the Bravo Brio Restaurant Group, sell their brand, and the fish market, in my opinion, was ready to really expand and grow. And we had some other brands, particularly Ocean Club, which now, if we look back in history, we've got 21 of those across the country, was ready to grow. And so, I thought about it. I said, well, this is an opportunity to reward our partners, get rid of all of our debt, and then we'd separate the team, but the team at the fish markets be able to grow more because, they've now a public company. Ruth Chris was buying them, and they wanted to grow it as a second brand for them to grow and so provide more opportunity for them. And meanwhile, then we could, provide more opportunity for our people to stay with us to grow our brands. We couldn't do it all together at once. It was just too much money, too expensive. And so I started out with good intentions, if you will, and it turned into be kind of a disaster. So the deal with Ruth worked out. I closed, but then they dismantled the culture and moved and just and sold it 6 years later. Affected our people. And I removed all of our debt. I started out with a clean slate, and I had some money in the bank for the first time ever. And I thought, oh my God, this is awesome. And I started, at that point, I read my own press clippings, and we were, what took 10 years to build, I thought we could rebuild in 2 years. And I went out there and got super aggressive and signed a bunch of leases, not even thinking, not even really knowing, and I was just so concerned about getting back there. And then a Great Recession hit. And so at the end of the day, we almost went bankrupt. It was, would have been really embarrassing, the remaining business, because I kept all of our corporate team there. But anyways, every dollar I took out of the company, I had to put back in to keep it afloat and to save it. So I didn't have any money at the end of the day. And then we had to run up the debt back up to stay afloat and keep that. So it was ended up being not all for nothing, but it was didn't work out the way I wanted it to work out. And I always say, in part of my book, I talk about it took some really we use the word poor restaurateuring to get into that business, and poor entrepreneuring to get into that position, and it took some really great entrepreneuring to get out of that position, but it took multiple years. We really set ourselves back, and so that was one of the lowest points of our journey, if you will, along the way. And in hindsight, it was a lot of it was self-induced, which really even made it worse.
But lessons you learn. I mean, I think back to our toughest losses. I don't care if it's personally or professionally. When you make mistakes and you think, "Whew, you know what? I'm going to learn some lessons from this one, and I'm going to be even better the next time." And so, as you started rebuilding, was there any difference in building the team based upon you'd seen all these things that had worked well? You saw some things that, you know what, I think if I had it to do over again, maybe I'd do it differently. So now I'm rebuilding this team. Was there any difference, or did you just go straight back to the...
Mostly straight back. I will say, there was, our culture and values were still the same. And I will say, every once you make a mistake, and every once in a while I take a second lap around the track. It takes another time or two to really make sure that, because you think, well, you can overcome here, you can overcome
right.
There. But generally speaking, you try to learn and grow along the way. But I'll never forget, we were in my office. We had 40 restaurants. We sold 22. They sold 2/3 of our business, but I kept our whole internal team at the office. And just, by the way, also distributed, 5% of our sale price to all of our teammates, so make sure everybody got a little piece of the action. But I'll never forget, I'm in my office. This is 2009, the height of recession. We're really struggling. And my assistant comes in, who's also a company officer, and says, hey, a lot of people in the back, we maybe had 30 people in the office at that time, or 20, somewhere ballpark 30, and said, some of the folks in the back office are worried there's going to be layoffs and people are going to get fired. I said, I want you to call an all-staff meeting in 5 minutes. So I get everybody in the office in 5 minutes. I come out, I say, I understand and rumor that there's going to be some layoffs and everything else. I said, I want to make sure real clear that, our culture and values isn't there for just the good times. It's there for the bad times. Yeah. And more importantly, it's there for the bad times. That's where you lean on it the most. I said, and that's where we're in the situation we're in. I said, we're in a very difficult time. But Carolyn, our VP of marketing, we're still advertising. We're still spending $500,000 a year on marketing, or whatever, or 700, whatever it is. I said, that part about our associates come first. I'm going to cut the advertising budget before we cut the people budget. Okay. So, you just come in every day to work and ask Caroline if we're still advertising, and we're not going to cut any people. Okay. Then I go, then you come in one day and Caroline's not advertising anymore, and, we still need to cut some dollars and savings. Then I'm going to have an all-staff meeting with everybody and say, listen, next week, unfortunately, we got, or I say, we got to save $500,000 more, and we can either do it, I can lay off 6 or 7 people, or everybody can take a 7-8% pay cut. And I'll walk out of the room and let you all figure out yourself what we're doing. And so, but until that meeting happens, know that there aren't going to be any layoffs. Right. And after that, we need another $500,000, and maybe we'll have to have some layoffs, and I'll have another meeting and say those are going to come in a couple days or next week, and I'll let you know what and so forth. And so until that happens, we're not having layoffs. But it doesn't change the situation we're in. We're in some deep doodah, and we need all hands on deck. And if you got a way to save $100 or $1,000 or $100,000, I want to know about it.
Yeah.
And so I need you to dig deep, but we need all hands on deck. And one of my other favorite things to say along the way is we're going to get there together. It's actually a theme of our leadership conference this past week in Napa Valley. So I need you to get back, get after it. Everybody's safe until any of these things happen, but I need everything out of you, everything I can get, and we can get. And I got flooded with ideas after that,
Right.
but people left, they'd run through a brick wall at that point in time. They knew. And then they answered that question, put it to bed, put it dead to bed.
Well, and they're part of that team.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I remember when we'd lose a game or we wouldn't have many offensive yards. Oh, fire the offensive coordinator, get rid of the quarterback coach. It's what. And then you'd get into the meeting room and say, look, we got to this point together. We've learned some lessons.
Right.
Our culture is not changing.
Yep.
This is who we are.
Right.
And
exactly.
we're gonna keep grinding through
Mirror
that.
image, absolutely.
Now, one of the things that the governor, Governor Mike DeWine, has me working on is the workforce realities we have nationally, but most importantly in our state, in our case, because we have some great opportunities coming to Ohio.
Oh, sure.
I mean, it's been amazing.
Yeah.
63 companies from both coasts, and we've got more opportunity in Ohio today than maybe we've had since 1930 something.
Yeah, in my opinion, yes. Yeah.
And so we work night and day on that. I know in the restaurant industry, there's a workforce challenge. One thing that I thought has been really cool about your story, if you will, is how you've gone into the education sector to help the industry. Obviously it helps you,
right?
But, the industry is important to you. And could you talk a little bit about the things that when you've been tied into the Culinary Institute out in New York and Columbus State here and, all those things, because that's solutions. We've got to find solutions. We need workforce in every sector. We need more PhD chemists so Sherwin-Williams can be taken care of.
Sure.
We need more technicians so this new Anduril plant or Intel or all the things that are booming. Talk about how you decided to invest your time and effort and influence to help the workforce in the restaurant industry.
Well, that's a multifaceted question.
It is,
because
but I'm a workforce guy now.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Well, we help our work. We increase our workforce. So just have your brother or your mom or your dad or your husband or your sister come work for us.
Right, sure.
We have hundreds of brothers, families that work in the company. So that helps us on that
Sure.
side of the coin. But, the restaurant business has been so good to me. It's saved my life. I was a high school dropout and a runaway, and, I left home when I was 15 and had just a miserable childhood. And, I found the restaurant business. It saved my life. I've been in it for 45 years now. I keep saying in 2030, because I started in 1980 as a junior in high school washing dishes, because I'd come back off the run. I needed to make some money. My mom couldn't give me any lunch money or anything. So, and that's how it all started. But anyways, so 5 years from now, in 2030, I've been in the restaurant business 50 years. So I joke with people, then I'll get some street cred, So anyways, 50 years coming. But, in my whole life, I've I had nothing. I mean, I was rolling change to buy a box of macaroni and cheese for 29 cents when I was back on the run and so forth. And so I lived my whole life by pushing out. The more I can push out, the more I can make life around me better, the better life will be for me and my family and everybody else. And so people say, they joke, you can make money being a homeless guy if you just walked around in front of me all day long, because I give every homeless person money. I just, here, help. I was in a restaurant the other day, homeless guy I look out the window, he was out there digging the trash can. I get up off my seat, walked up, hand him a $20 bill and say, not today, move on. So enjoy, have a good day, So, and the education, you mentioned the CIA. I'm going up there actually in a few weeks for dedication ceremony for a large gift I've given the school and so forth, and with my family in tow and all that. I started there 40 years ago. And, and we have Columbus State here that I've been, when I got turned down to go to the CIA because of my high school grades, I went to Columbus State and took some math and English classes, got accepted. So it's always been a part of my heart. But giving back in education for me, when I graduated from the culinary, I didn't graduate 1 inch above ground. I laid the footers though for my foundation. So education is so important, and some people just need to get started. We have a program now. I think we've getting close to 100 people in it. We talk about for foster. We call it Fostering Futures. As foster kids age out of foster homes at 18, they don't know what to do. We try to get them into the restaurant business and try to help them. Hopefully, they can have the same experience or a piece of the same experience that I had. To save
and
my
get
life.
a family, because your restaurants are families.
Right. Exactly.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So, it's about paying it back to the industry. It's about impacting people's lives and helping people grow in their careers. And they may not be with us, but their career in a restaurant business it doesn't matter. It's just I love this industry. I love the people in it, and all people across the board. But I want to do our part to help them maybe get a taste or a piece of what happened to me along the way. So
Well, that's, you hear so much about successful business people, and you really do need to read their books, because what you find out is that there's a whole lot more involved in just their great restaurants or just their great department stores or just their great, they want to make a difference. And as I say, the governor, when he brought me on as lieutenant governor, he said, hey, we've got so many opportunities. We've got to get this workforce thing going, but we need everybody. We need every Ohioan. We need every person coming out of corrections. We need every person coming out of recovery and addiction. We need every person that's on the sideline. We need to give them a chance. And so what was so fascinating to me reading your book was that, not only have you enjoyed what the restaurant business has meant to you and your family, but you want to make sure that it does that, for others and for other people who are in the restaurant business, because we need the workforce. Right. So one last topic I need to talk to you about, because
before you move on to that last topic, I was going to tell you, someone asked me one day, said, Cam, how much money do you want to make? I said, as much as I possibly can. Sounds very shallow, right? So like, oh, that's all it's about for you is making money? And they said, why is that? I said, well, the more money that I can make is the more money that I can give away and give back to everybody around me.
Amen.
And so they go, oh, okay, that makes sense. So go ahead. Sorry,
and I often think about people that want to bellyache about the billionaires and this and that. And I think about, the Carnegies or the Rockefellers, we wouldn't have these parks. We wouldn't have these universities. We wouldn't have, it's part of the great American story. It really is. But speaking of that, one of the things I was always impressed in, when I lived in Columbus for 10 years, 3 years as an assistant back in the 80s, but 10 years in the 2000s, I was always appreciative of the people in our community that were really trying to make Columbus a special place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it was the government and it was the university.
Yeah, sure.
And then all of a sudden some different businesses and so forth. But I really think that there in that first decade of the 2000s, we had some real civic leaders that stepped up and said, you know what? I'm not sure Columbus knows how good it can be. And I know you were in those conversations. I wasn't as the coach because I was in there watching film until midnight and so forth. And so I wasn't as civically involved as I think back now. Maybe I could have been or whatever. But what do you think has been the secret of building this team in Columbus? Because it's one of the fastest growing cities, and I know you were in those rooms.
Yeah, sure. I remember quite well. But in 2000 to 2010, call it, we were, Les Wexner and John Wolf started meeting and started, we got a group of other leaders together and started to think about how we could grow Columbus for the betterment of everybody, not just, so
the betterment of
civic
state.
leader.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, and I remember that same time period, I was on the Convention and Visitors Bureau board here, and Columbus has this reputation at the time of like a bowl of vanilla ice cream. I mean, there was just nothing to it, And so, and back in those days, it was like picking a pope, right? You wait till Les and John would get in a room and a couple of guys, and you wait till the smoke comes up, and then, the white smoke, and now we know we've got a decision. Well, and that wasn't enough for them. And so they realized a long time ago, and they were all both great leaders in their own right. Obviously, their success in business along the way. So they started to, we need everybody. We need all hands on deck. So I'll never forget, I was in my office. Guy comes to me from the Columbus Partnership back at the time, and it's still there today. And then it was they had a concept called a Columbus 2020. It was a vision of where they want to be in 2020. And I'll never forget this triangle, and how and they wanted money from me, right? And so, but the triangle was, it was the governor, it was the state, it was Ohio State University, it was the city council, it was big business, Nationwide Insurance, it was medium-sized business, small businesses, and they were asking back at the time for me $10,000, but it was this triangle, air-based tech, and that's what did it. Then they eventually, now we have 75 members of the Columbus Partnership on board, and Harvard has now done many stories on Columbus called the Columbus. We have the thing called the Columbus Way, and how, it wasn't Republican, Democrat. It wasn't, this is my turf, not your turf. It was everybody joined hands, small, large, government, local, county, state, the university. Everybody joined hands. And the results have been spectacular. Today we're one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in the country. We've got, like I said, Harvard doing case studies on us, on how we've done it in the Columbus Way, and that's spread throughout the state. And our state is very healthy, getting very healthy, thanks to you and Governor DeWine, and everybody else out in leadership out there. So it is. I mean, the results are powerful. It's team building, just on a different team, But the results are very, very powerful, and I hope it continues. So we, John is no longer with us. Les is retired. We had not as much in the public eye. We have a new. Alex Fisher is no longer with the partnership. He's retired, and I hope we have a new leader, and I hope it could continue. And we reset our goals and reset our strategy, because we sure have had a hell of a lot of success in really 15 short years, and I want to see it continue. And again, what's beautiful is all these successful leaders. I mean, I wish we could add up how many billions of dollars worth of businesses in that room in the Columbus Partnership, and not one of them in that room, not one CEO in that room is doing it for themselves or their company. They're doing it for the city they live in, where their home is, and their headquarters are, and the betterment of everybody. And those results have just been very powerful.
I know when I was getting ready to come here in 2001 as the coach, some of the conversation I had heard was that they're in the 90s and so forth. Well, I don't know if the university gets along too well with the, with the city, and I don't know if this and that, and I thought, well, whatever. But what I witnessed for the 10 years I was here was just as you're talking about, and what will be interesting going forward, just like as your restaurant business went from 10 to 20 to 30 to 40, there's a different set of problems. There's a different set of opportunities, of course.
Right, sure.
Challenges. And one thing won't change, though. It's got to be all about the team. And it's got to have the same mission and core and values. And it's been very eye-opening for me now being here working with Governor DeWine. And, I was myopic. I had a football team and I was working on that. Or then I had a university and I was working on that. But to see the totality of the challenges that there are in a state of 12 million people, and wonderful opportunities coming. Can we create that workforce team? Can we have that leadership grow? Building a team sometimes is harder when the success gets more, because
right, sure, it's easy to sit back,
easy to
rest on your laurels,
become complacent and so forth. So we're lucky we have folks like you that have built that foundation on that triangle, and what we've got to do is make sure that we're training up the future.
Right.
You know, John Wolfs and, you know, folks and Alex Fishers that can come in and continue that great tradition and make it bigger and better. And one thing I really appreciated I appreciate many things, but about Andy Geiger when he was our athletic director, when he came in the mid-90s, I remember, I was in Youngstown, but I still was following Ohio State. I remember his message was loud and clear. It's like, you guys don't even know how good we can be. We've got to start thinking bigger. We've got to start working together more and thinking bigger. And so as you know, as you get that infusion of the right kind of culture, you know, you have, you know, the sky is the limit, and you know, it's so much fun. And this has been an awesome hour to sit and talk. You're so busy and you got these things coast to coast, and I appreciate this so much. And I guess I'll just say to the folks viewing and listening, I promise you, your team will gain value if you get Cameron Mitchell's book, Yes. And now what's the question? Because I wish I would have had it 25 years ago, and I'm glad I have this chance to share, you know, your experiences, your wisdom, your thoughts with all of our folks, and can't thank you enough.
I appreciate you. I'm not sure how much wisdom is there, but lots of experience.
Well, you know, as we get older,
right.
I was told some of our skills diminish, but wisdom increases.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Yeah, you know, 6,000 people today. I don't know about our IT business, with our business, and all these other things just have grown past me, way past me.
But you're in the culture business,
right?
You're
exactly.
in the team business,
exactly,
and
right.
that's going to carry it.
And I was just going to add just one final tidbit, you know, because we just talked about here in Columbus, the power of the team in the state of Ohio and what's happening, and just another example. But you know, our culture is also, and can a partnership, you know, succeed and evolve into the next, you know, partnership 2.0, if you will. And you know, part of our culture is, which I lean on the most, is it says in there, you know, one of our core values: be better today than we were yesterday, and better tomorrow than we are today. You know, that does two things for us. One, it's our insurance policy. You know, we could discuss all day long how successful is Cameron Mitchell Restaurants. Well, you know, super successful, somewhat successful, whatever. We can debate that all day long. But we would agree with the statement, we're somewhat of a successful restaurant company. Anybody would agree with that statement, right? So if we're better today than we were yesterday and better tomorrow than we are today, by virtue of that alone, tomorrow will be more of a successful restaurant company than we are today. So that's number one. And number two, it creates a constant state of trying to be better. You cannot be better at something today than you were yesterday or tomorrow than you are today without working at it, without, you know, building your craft. And so that's the heart of our culture there too. Also, you know, besides all the other things I've talked about. But if you don't keep one foot in front of the other, and you know, trying to be better today than we were yesterday, that's when you start to go like this. And we don't want to go like that.
That was our theme at Ohio State, and then at Youngstown State when I was president. It was a Latin phrase, "Macte virtute." It was a command. It was increase your excellence every day. And if we can do that,
yeah,
we're going to be fine.
Exactly. All right.
Well, thank you so much for this time.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
Until the next time, remember, it's all about the team.